Today in the EU, 4 days with Ursula von der Leyen. Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen has started touring member states to rally support for EPP national members and strengthen relationships with national centre-right leaders. The latest visits were to Split and Rome. So what happened during her tour and what were the main messages VDL wanted to communicate ahead of the EU elections in June? Hello, I am Eva Chiori and this is Today in the EU. Our politics reporter Max Griera followed Ursula von der Leyen for 4 days on her tour. So, Max, you just came back. You're all fresh and tanned. Tell us, where were you these past few days?
Well, for the last 4 days, from Friday last week until Monday this week, I was shadowing current Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on her campaigning trail. We went to Split in Croatia and then to Rome.
Why was she there?
She went there as the lead candidate of the European People's Party. As the possible next Commission President, she's campaigning for her re-election. However, she's not campaigning to get votes because she actually is not running on a list, right? And if she would be running on a list, she would need to campaign in Germany, where she can get votes, of course. So what she's campaigning for is for member parties. She's going to different member states with the national members of the European People's Party to campaign on their behalf, to show face, so that national member parties can say, look, here's a Commission President, we have such a good relationship, she's done all this fantastic job at the EU level, and now she's here greeting people on the ground. So that would be one, rallying support for member parties. And then on the other hand, my analysis is that, in a way, her campaigning tour across Europe is also to cement her position within EPP. Because let's remember that von der Leyen came as a wild card last minute in 2019, kicking Manfred Weber, the actual lead candidate of the European People's Party back then, out of the race. So in a way, maybe she's also trying to, again, cement these relationships to make sure that all the European People's Party members really support her and have a good relationship with her. Because, for example, we saw that when she got appointed lead candidate, she didn't have full support. There were some people voting against her and a lot of abstentions.
Your trip started on Friday in Split, Croatia. And this is how it sounded. But how did the EPP campaign launch really was?
We were there in Split for the HDZ party campaign kickoff. HDZ is the Croatian member of the European People's Party. They are in government. Prime Minister Andrej Plenković is the leader. The main purpose of her being there, of course, was to go to the kickoff rally where they presented the candidates. For example, Commissioner Dubravka Šuica was also there.
Indeed, and you had the chance to talk to her briefly.
On voters, young voters especially, why should they go to vote?
They should go to vote because you know that I was leading a conference on the future of Europe. And in that conference, we had 1/3 of youngsters from 16 to 25. And we think that we cannot talk about our future without them.
But then, apart from this grand event, they also organized a series of other campaign events around. So, for example, we started with a meeting with young people to talk about youth priorities. So young people would be able to ask her questions, and then she would answer in a very, I have to say, also different way than what we're used to. Because, of course, we're used to seeing von der Leyen very formal, very, she's a stateswoman.
Very conscious of what she is saying.
Yes, very conscious of what she's saying. And in this case, she was more loose. She was being more charismatic, even, perhaps.
To cross-speaker for Eurovision Croatia.
After that, we went with her and the Prime Minister, Andrej Plenković, because they spent the day together. They walked in the main areas and then they sat to have a coffee with other personalities from HDZ. However, of course, we need to keep in mind that everything is quite controlled. So when I say we went for a walk, it means we went for a walk with an entourage of 50 people that were around her with all this press and, of course, all the security around her. So it's not like she could talk to strangers in the streets. It's not that she started doing knocking at the doors, right? From my interpretation, it was more of a thing of image. with all the cameras, Plenković and herself shaking hands, then an actual, I'm getting out there to convince people to vote for EPP thing. And the same with the young meeting, because yes, it was young people, but it was people from the young wing of HDZ, the Croatian EPP member, right? There were no random youngsters from the streets that, it was pretty much under control. It seemed like the questions were already set from before.
But then at some point she just disappeared. What happened?
She not only is the lead candidate campaigning, she's also the Commission President. So she needs to do both at the same time, which is a huge endeavor.
Yeah.
First of all, she has two teams. She has the campaign team and the Commission President team. This means that during the week, she needs to break down the days. And even within the days, she needs to break down the times in which she is Commission President and in which she's lead candidate. Because when she's Commission President, she needs to work with the team from the Commission. And when she's campaigning, she needs to work with the EPP campaign team. So that's what happened on Saturday. She came back to Brussels to be Commission President for a day. And then the day after, on Sunday, she was lead candidate again. And then she went to Italy.
And it looks like she is torn between being the Commission President and actively campaigning as a candidate. Does she really manage to balance these two out, or how does that look?
After being with her for 4 days, I could also see that maybe it takes some time for her to go from commission mindset to campaigning mindset. Yeah. Right? So you saw in Split, for example, how we went from commission mindset, very formal, and then throughout the day, she became more open, more in a campaigning mood, let's say. But then at the same time, I can imagine how it has to be difficult for her, because as Commission President, for example, in the doorstep they had at the very beginning of the day with the Prime Minister, she gets a lot of questions on her work in the Commission. So, of course, this gets very much intertwined.
Yes, weirdly intertwined.
There's this dichotomy between her being lead candidate and Commission President is that, of course, she always has this big entourage. So when she was talking, having this dialogue with youth, in theory, of course, she was surrounded by everyone, by press, by people from the party. So at some point, she started asking, where's the youth? Where's the youth? Like, let's open the circle.
Cameras go to a certain point so that I can speak to the young people. At the moment being, I'm kind of given.
The other thing is the talking points. Of course, she's campaigning to be in the Commission again. So she's using what she's done in the last 5 years and then projecting a build-up of this work in the next 5 years.
And then it was time to fly to Italy on Sunday. Much happened there as well. So tell us more about it.
Much happened behind the scenes, but ultimately not that much. Because when she visits countries, it's the national member party that invites von der Leyen, that invites EPP to go. Which means that it's also the national party that arranges the schedule.
Yes.
So what the EPP does is they wait for the official schedule from the national party and then they build campaigning trips around this, more campaigning activities.
Why Italy at this specific time?
So the whole point, let's be honest, of her going to Italy was to go to the campaign kickoff of Forza Italia, the foreign minister Antonio Tajani's party, but she ultimately didn't go.
Why not?
So there's different speculations for that. It could be because there's some division within the party on the approach to von der Leyen. But then there's another factor, which is that in Italy, there's not only Forza Italia as member of EPP, there's other parties too. So some said that it would be inappropriate for her to pick a favorite, let's say, and to go to that campaign. And then there's also the other component that many media, Italian media, were speculating how it could be that just Tajani didn't want to show himself being too close to her publicly.
Why wouldn't he want this?
Because, of course, at the moment, there's a big debate in Italy between Lega, Forza Italia, Meloni's, Fratelli d'Italia, on what approach to have on von der Leyen. And, for example, Lega is doing this very intense campaign against EU, against von der Leyen, which could maybe harm Tajani if he shows to be very close to von der Leyen. He then, of course, he did meet with von der Leyen. They're very close allies. But then they did so behind closed doors. So first of all, they went to the Fondazione De Gasperi, which is a think tank affiliated to Forza Italia. And then she met once again with youth. However, like in Croatia, it's not any kind of youth. It's the youth of Forza Italia. And then after that, she met with representatives from the agricultural industry lobby. This was organized by Tajani, but it was organized last minute. So in the end, I think the program turned out well because also from her side, she also decided to do these interviews. So, for example, she met with an influencer. And then the day before that, on Sunday, she went to Milano to this very famous program, Che Tempo Che Fa, which has, by the way, a more center-left audience, let's say, but it's one of the programs most watched in Italy.
Lei si ricorda I nomi di tutti e sette? No,
Sì.
Naturalmente sì.
David.
And that's where we saw her quite relaxed and joking around with the presenter, who challenged her to remember all the names of her children.
So she did her things to make herself known, to really show face in Italy. But then when it comes to the campaigning program from Forza Italia,
Not so good.
not so good, not so good.
You know, this is all nice, but what were the main speaking points or messages she really wanted to communicate during this tour?
She is using what she's done in the past to look at the future. And across the two locations, in Split and Rome, you could identify two things. First, how indeed, of course, she tailors the message to whatever she is. So, for example, in Split, she talked a lot about enlargement, about Bosnia-Herzegovina, which is very important for Croatians. And then in Italy, she talked a lot about recovery funds. She talked a lot about defense, which is a thorny issue in Italy. So that was interesting to see. But then at the same time, there were these overarching topics that I think, you know, the more we see her in campaign, the more confirmed they will be. But I feel like these topics will become her main priorities, perhaps, during the next college.
Right. Which topics are you talking about?
So this would be, of course, competitiveness. That's a huge topic. She constantly talked about it. In that sense, she draws from the Letta report. She draws from calls from member states, you know, to really save Europe's industry. It follows, you know, these investigations into electric vehicles from China. So really how to make Europe more, you know, made in Europe. How to make it more competitive. The other one, the huge one, is defense. The only thing she has confirmed for sure about, if she gets reelected, about her future college is that there will be a commissioner of defense. Yeah. Of course, now we get into the debate, what is a commissioner of defense? What would this person do? Because we have the high representative. So what does the commissioner of defense do? Stepping up support to Ukraine. That's also, she constantly repeats. And then she, of course, ahead of elections, one of her priorities is defense of European democracy. That's something she also kept mentioning, both in Split and Rome. They need to really step up European capabilities on that. And then it was interesting to see that right after I left, then she went to Copenhagen, where she announced that if she is re-elected, she would push for this European Democracy Shield, which will be some sort of package to, you know, really build up some sort of new body, agency at the EU level to fight foreign interference in general online. So these would be the main three topics. And of course, the fourth one is a Green Deal, a continuation to the Green Deal. But the question is how? Because we had some backlash from some member states, from some parties. We have some other parties pushing for more ambition. So we'll see how von der Leyen really balances that.
And if you were to share with us what struck you from this trip, what would that be?
It was interesting to see her as close as I was able to, right? We had a briefing with her, and it was interesting to be able to chat with her more informally and see really, in a way, perhaps, who is behind the Commission President, Ursula.
Thank you, Max, for letting us follow Ursula von der Leyen through your eyes. I am Evi Chiori, and this was Euractiv's Today in the EU podcast. Visit Euractiv to stay on top of the latest news, sign up for our podcast newsletter, and if you haven't subscribed or followed us yet, you can find us on all streaming platforms. Also, make sure to leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Your reviews really help us spread the word about our work. And this episode was produced by Miriam Sáenz de Tejada, Nicoleta Yonta, and myself. Thank you for tuning in, and until tomorrow morning. As part of our commitment to accuracy, inclusion, and transparency, Euractiv is part of the Trust Project.